This week on the WriterCon podcast.
Well, what I would say is never stop writing. And I understand that you can't write every day, although you should. And I don't always, but never give up. I know that sounds a little trite at times, but never give up your dream. Keep writing. You will find what you need to find. You will find an agent. You will find a publisher. If not, you'll find it another way. But if you have that story inside you and those characters and that voice, you know what you were meant to do.
Welcome to WriterCon, a gathering place for writers to share their knowledge about writing and the writing world. Your hosts are William Bernhardt, best-selling novelist and author of the Red Sneaker books on writing, and Lara Bernhardt, award-winning author of the Wantland Files book series.
Hey there, writers. Thanks for joining me and Lara Bernhardt and Jesse Ulrich. Last time I broke possibly the biggest story of my career, the fact that one of my books has been banned in Florida. That's what made me realize that, it took 60 books and 30 plus years, but now I've made it. But now I know that this podcast has made it because, wait for it, because we were referenced by someone we covered in a news story, and it would be the last person you might expect. Regular listeners may recall, I think it was in the Christmas episode, when we reported on Purr, that's P-I-R-R, a European company using AI to generate what are essentially kind of choose your own adventures, except the adventures are, what word would you use, Jesse?
Erotic?
Oh,
spicy.
Go for spicy. Yes, for sure.
Spicy.
They've got some heat to them.
Yeah.
Pornographic, but they definitely have some heat. Yes. I thought they might be upset if they heard our coverage, since we did have a little fun with it, but apparently they were delighted.
They loved it.
And posted about it. Jesse, you've got that graphic, don't you? They posted on X and all over the place on social media and said, quote, "We are glad to hear their perspectives on utilizing Purr and its potential impact on both writers and readers, adding a unique dimension to the conversation." Well, Jesse, were you surprised when you saw this?
I mean, yes, I was surprised they heard it.
Yeah, almost
and
that. Yes.
That also means that there's at least one listener to this podcast who is also on Purr who told them about it.
Now that's an interesting Venn diagram.
To our spicy listeners, I thank you.
Yes, right. Lara, I don't know if you noticed, but they referred to you in very flattering terms. I think maybe you could get on their writing staff.
Ooh, okay. I would consider that proposition. Yeah, take a look at that. It's tough for me to turn down writing gigs.
Yeah.
I love writing.
Yeah, money's money.
We should also ask our agent friend Amy if she likes the service, because as she told us at WriterCon this year and on the cruise, you gotta keep things spicy. So
that's another thing we can say about the cruise, isn't it? Because Amy was predicting what we're about to talk about in the news story like 8 months ago. But anyway, all right. Before we get to that, our interview today is with Debbie Babitt, who is the author of now 2 thrillers, Saving Grace and First Victim, and she's got a 3rd out in May. She's launching her career like a rocket, which I know is the dream of many people. So and understandably so. So we will talk to her all about it. But first, the news. Well, maybe news was the wrong word, but that's what we say every time. So I'm just going to stick with it. What we're actually doing, we do this every January on the podcast. Basically, look into our crystal balls and try to make predictions about things that we think are going to happen, are going to be big and trending in 2024. And I came up with a list of 4, basically. Quick preview. New genres will emerge. AI will continue. Book banning might continue. And of course, the FTC is going after Amazon for antitrust in a big way. Let's start with the first one, Jesse, because you were just talking about Amy on the cruise. I think that was the first time I'd heard spicy romance. This is another benefit to the cruise, Jesse, because you were just mentioning Amy, and she predicted what was going to happen months before it actually did. But as we know, later in 2023, The Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros became a huge breakout hit. And now people are talking about a new genre they call romantasy, which is essentially a blending of romance and fantasy, but with a young adult or perhaps new adult protagonist. The protagonist in The Fourth Wing is 20, for instance, so that would be classified as new adult. But it's more than just romance and fantasy. The romance part is much more explicit than some people might expect in a book for young people, and there's lots of swearing and violence as well. It's not your mother's Nancy Drews, basically. And now from Catherine Sands, who will, by the way, be our guest on this podcast next weekend, but she tells us that she's hearing blips from publishers about gaslamp fantasy, which is essentially steampunk except with magic, instead of science fiction, is fantasy. And the other thing she mentioned, which you knew I'd bring up, was sugar kink, which is apparently kinky, but not so much. It's like there's a little bit of S&M content, but not full out erotica. So this is what
sweet and spicy, kind of like a sweet
like
kinky.
Well, they didn't say sweet kink, I guess.
That's true.
That's where they're getting with it. Sugar. So which one are you going to write first, Laura? I mean, you were talking about writing for her. Sugar kink might be.
Maybe sugar kink. Actually, what I would like to see added to this is steamy punk. I actually am a fan of steampunk, so we could mix that up and have some extra heat to that and get some steamy punk going.
It sounds like you just take a genre and just put more kink and or sex into it.
There we go.
And I would say
we're all in.
Yeah, but what's
or
funny is
at least the current gen of readers. Yeah.
Well, and listen, like you go back and read classic fantasy, there is romance in there. It's just not the romance we are used to today. I would say, for example, The Lord of the Rings is actually a love story between Frodo and Sam, right?
But no explicit sex scenes, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, unless you read the appendices. No, I'm just kidding. Don't read the appendices. First of all, don't read the appendices. Also, there's no
I mean, you're the expert. If you say so.
Maybe.
So would you read, I bet you've read steampunk before. Would you read Gaslamp Fantasy?
Oh, yeah. I mean, like what you do is you take something interesting and put it into a time period or a place where it is not usually there. And then that is always interesting because like magical things are usually either modern or old, not like a little bit old. Right. And I like the idea of mixing like magic and steampunk feel like a perfect partnership because like steampunk is almost kind of, it's like, it feels like magic to the people living in it. So why not just throw some actual magic in there?
Maybe the really best-selling winning combination would be to combine all three of these things. So you've got a novel that's set in the 19th century and it's kind of steampunky, but there's also magic and romance and of course, sugar kink. You think we could get all that into a book?
Absolutely.
Might be able to sell that one. 100%. Okay, topic number 2, AI, which of course we've been talking about for probably the last 3 or 4 months, and it's going to continue on into the next year. A bunch of lawsuits have been filed by the New York Times, by several celebrities, by the Authors Guild. They may end up combining some of those lawsuits, but clearly it's going to be challenged. Where do you think we'll be at the end of this year? I'll go, Jesse, you're our tech expert. Where's this going?
Yeah, I think we were also just sort of amazed by AI and these, large language models, LLMs as they're called, when they first came out, that like we all forgot to ask like where they got all their information from. And now that it's publicly coming out that like they just scraped the internet and scraped people's property and work.
Right.
Like people are owed something for that. There needs to be rules about what they're allowed to use, and then there needs to be recompense for the fact that a lot of these AI models ended up using things that people spent, years of their lives working on. Like, I think that's fair.
AI has its usefulness. There are great ways to use it. We had a conversation at work about this. I was talking with someone who is just completely 100% like, AI is a curse word to this person now. And I was trying to explain, predictive text. It's AI. When you are typing and word catches a misspelling, that's AI. These things can help us out. What we don't want is for it to be stealing someone else's work. If it's improving your own creative work, that's fantastic. So I put it in line with it. If it's helping make your work better, is that any different than having a tutor or an editor, someone like that? If it's improving your work, I'm all for it. If it's saving you time in doing some research, if you can use Google Translate on your ramen noodles that you ordered from Japan and you can't tell how you're supposed to cook it or what the flavor is, then great, that's terrific. I know that sounds oddly specific, but that's what I was doing for lunch today. So there's great uses for AI. But when, as Jesse said, if it's stealing from someone else, from their work that they put so much time and effort into, that's why now we're finding we have to put some rules in place.
Yeah. What I would predict for 2024, I think, is that we're going to see more licensing deals. We have already seen some. And if you're a legit company using AI, the simple solution is pay someone the licensing rights to use their material. Okay, number 3, book banning. Well, we started that at the top of the show with me bragging again that I've been banned in Florida, but it has affected writers other than me. And as we reported earlier, Penguin Random House, the largest publishing house in the English-speaking world, along with a lot of other people, sued Iowa over its new book banning legislation and did, in fact, get a judge to issue a preliminary injunction against most parts of the law. That's not the last word, of course, but it does mean that it doesn't go into effect yet. I think basically he's going to let it be appealed up and let somebody else decide. But the judge noted that the law, quote, here I'm quoting, the law is incredibly broad and in anticipation of the law taking effect, has resulted in the removal of hundreds of books from school libraries, including, among others, nonfiction history books, classic works of fiction, Pulitzer Prize-winning contemporary novels, books that regularly appear on advanced placement exams, and even books designed to help students avoid being victimized by sexual assault. That seems a little too broad to me. What do you guys think?
Book banning makes me crazy. The fact is that these YA titles that deal with harsh realities are able to reach students in a way that some of the books from canon just can't do because they're so old. They don't feel like they can connect to these books. Imagine somebody who's having difficulty talking about an abuse situation or their sexuality or maybe their socioeconomic status. When you can open that book and connect with someone in your situation and feel like you're not alone, that makes all the difference. And I think it's critical that students have access to this. I 100% agree that it violates our amendments. I sometimes had, I watched what my children were bringing home and reading, and I didn't try to limit that. I didn't want to shield them too much. The books are a good way to start learning how to navigate some of the harsh realities of the world we live in. And it's a safe way to do that.
Yeah. Well, you're raising the issue of age appropriateness, which is kind of what the judge is saying. He's saying this is too broad. You need to be more specific about how, when, what, and where. I mean, my book, Dark Eye, as I've said a couple times now, has apparently been banned, but I don't know why or from where. I mean, if it were on the shelf in a kindergarten, I would have taken it out. It shouldn't be there. On the other end, it was taken out of a public library where adults go. That's a whole different thing.
You know, librarians are incredibly intelligent. They're smart people. A school librarian at an elementary school is not going to have age-inappropriate books. And it would irritate me as a parent if another parent wanted to ban a book because they don't want their child to read it. If I'm fine with my child reading it, I don't see why somebody else can opt to exclude it from the entire school.
All right, last topic I'm going to go to, because just as we have to mention AI every time, it seems, we have to mention Amazon, right? But in this case, and Jesse always wants to mention James Patterson, of course.
That's true.
The main things are AI and Amazon. And as we previously reported, Amazon's now being sued by the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, in 17 states for antitrust. And many people, including The Nation, the publication, have called it the biggest antitrust fight of our time. Not much has happened so far. Amazon's filed a motion to dismiss. They always do that. It's not going to work. And this suit will take years to resolve. What do you think is going to happen? Jesse, where do you see this going?
Well, this is one of the things where it also depends on what happens in the next presidential election, too. So
yes, I was trying to dodge politics, but you're totally right.
But let's say the lawsuit continues, right?
Yeah.
Amazon broke really the one central rule that, our nation's governments over the last 30 years have been okay with monopolies up until a certain point. But the mistake Amazon made was they started competing against people selling on Amazon too much. Like I can buy Amazon basic melatonin, right? Mm-hmm. Like, why is Amazon making, medicinal gummies? They don't need to. They want to. And this is where if Amazon has to decide whether they are a maker of things or a marketplace of things. And they went way too far into we're going to see what's popular, what people are buying, and then make a cheaper version of that thing. That's not cool.
That they can then advertise and put front and center and bring all the attention to. Yeah, so not only will it make a better deal, it also gets put front and center.
Yeah, Amazon, stop showing me a half a page of sponsored things until you show me the thing I actually searched for. Stop it.
Right.
It's possible they could reach some kind of compromise. This has happened before, just to remind everybody, because we reported on this too. But in 2022, Amazon settled with the EU, the European Union, which had also brought an antitrust case against Amazon. So Amazon changed around some of its business practices and settled the lawsuit. I don't even know how this one could be settled, but that's a possibility. And of course, as I think Jesse is suggesting, if the next presidential election goes Republican, the case could be completely dismissed. So,
depending on who that Republican is, it might continue going on just because certain people hate Amazon and the owner of Amazon. So that it'll be an interesting fight there to see what happens there.
You raise an interesting point. Yes.
So
indeed.
Ironically, it might continue. Who knows? Predictions.
All right, everyone. That's our crystal ball gazing for 2024. Jesse, cue up the music. Let's talk to Debbie Babitt. Podcast.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
All right. We have a traditional first question here. If you could offer writers one piece of advice, just one, pare it down to that essential one, what would it be?
Well, what I would say is never stop writing. And I understand that you can't write every day, although you should. And I don't always, but never give up. I know that sounds a little trite at times, but never give up your dream. Keep writing. You will find what you need to find. You will find an agent. You will find a publisher. If not, you'll find it another way. But if you have that story inside you and those characters and that voice, you know what you were meant to do, and you will succeed ultimately.
Love it.
I love that.
Stay with it no matter what, even when you have those dark nights of the soul.
Which we all get
Oh, yes.
Everyone experiences those moments.
Yeah.
So you have 2 books published. Yes. You have Saving Grace and First Victim, and you have one that's about to come out. Yes.
Yes. The Man on the Train comes out May 7th.
And these are all thrillers, right? Can you tell us about Saving Grace?
Yes. Saving Grace was my 2021 debut. And it's about girls who go missing in a southern town, Northwest Arkansas. And the story takes place in 2 time periods. Mary Grace Dobbs, my main character, is an 11-year-old orphan in the first part, living with her aunt and uncle, and 2 classmates go missing. At the same time, the adult Mary Grace Dobbs, the sheriff of the town, and a single mom herself, because we go back and forth, she's sheriff at the time, and another girl goes missing.
Oh, wow.
And what's unusual about Saving Grace is it's a hybrid because it's psychological suspense, but it's also a whodunit. And you don't usually have the 2 together. Mysteries are whodunits, and psychological suspense we know are how and why dunnits.
Mm-hmm.
So Saving Grace is unusual that way.
And then your second book, First Victim. Well, of course, that caught my attention because it's kind of sort of a legal thriller, right? With this wonderful female judge protagonist. Tell us about that book, please.
Well, my characters come to me in voices. So I saw this courtroom, and it was a murder trial. And I saw this woman in a long black robe enter the courtroom and take the bench. So I knew I had my main character, Alice. And she's presiding over a murder trial, but like all thrillers, there's always a past. So something about this trial and this defendant, he's on trial for the murder of a pregnant woman, talks to her and calls to something in her past. So she grapples with that while she's presiding over this murder trial and trying to be, as we all know, judges have to be, unbiased, objective. So, and she's got family issues and emotional things going on in her life. So everything's kind of at the breaking point for her. And this trial comes along with the defendant who then decides he wants to go pro se. So it's like a battle of wills in the courtroom. And that's part 1.
That sounds very compelling.
And that's just the elevator pitch or whatever. Good one. But you would be the expert because you've written on that subject, haven't you? I know that in addition to writing, you've done a significant amount to help other writers find their path, and which is sort of the WriterCon, what we're all about. Right. So there's this book called Making the Perfect Pitch, and you've got an article in it, right? Adventures in Copywriting.
Exactly. This is really interesting. I had stopped acting. I was a playwright. I walk into a bookstore and I'm thinking, what do I do for a third act? And I meet a woman in a bookstore. I'm looking at the Harlequin romances thinking, I could write these, but I don't read romance. So I didn't want this woman who was there next to me to think that I would read romances. So I said, I'm thinking of writing a romance. And she said, really? My sister's associate publisher of Harlequin, and they need people to write back covers. I said, what's that? What do you mean? Don't editors write their own flap copy and back covers? And she said, no. So I met her sister. She rips the back cover off a paperback and says, write it. A new career was born. I became a freelance copywriter. I was ultimately offered a position at Kensington, Walter Zacharias, Zebra. And that was the first copy chief they ever had. And from there, I went to Penguin when it was merging with Putnam. And I became the head copy chief there. And that's true. I got to work with authors all the time, writing their copy, getting approval. And at one point, I thought, I should just write my own book. I'm in this business writing all this great copy for other authors, which was really lovely. They were very grateful. I remember with E.L. Doctorow, I had to read one of his huge books and write copy in 2 days. And I met him in a restaurant. And he said, you did a great job. And I didn't want to tell him I didn't have time to read the whole book. I took a speed reading course. And he said, you did so well. He was like, his wife took my hand and said, you're so wonderful. And I didn't want to say, I didn't read it all. But you have to learn how to really, I have to say that copywriting honed my craft.
I'll bet so.
You have to pack so much information and exposition into a limited number of words. So it taught me discipline. It taught me how to get everything out in a way that doesn't seem like you're giving exposition and is still active verbs. So I really learned a lot from copywriting, I have to say. And that stayed with me. And I still keep my hand in a bit. And I like to help authors and write blurb, and then you have to get the reviews and cut them down and make everything work. So that was actually very good, a very good background for writing a novel.
That's fascinating. I think that could be a good exercise for a lot of authors, actually, learning to cut down and learn what's really important and what's not. Sometimes I struggle with getting that message across kindly that this isn't really helping the book right now. So that's fascinating.
Yeah. Unless
so
go ahead.
Thinking that you wanted to write romance, but you're writing thrillers.
Well,
where do you get those ideas? I mean, the books sound very compelling. Did you hear something that prompted this? Girls that have gone missing?
It's interesting. I was thinking of writing a romance, even though I don't read them. So it's a good thing I didn't go down that path. But I grew up reading mysteries and suspense. That's the books my mother had in the house. Couldn't wait to get my hands on the next Nancy Drew. Remember those black?
Yes. Oh, I read all. Yes.
Oh my God.
I think at one point I had read all of them. I don't know.
Oh, they're so wonderful. So it was natural for me to want to write in this genre. And it always starts with character for me. So in Saving Grace, it was this 11-year-old orphan in the South. And little by little, she was talking to me and showing me her state and her world. And she started revealing herself. So that's how it works for me. I don't know if you have acting background. I thought
I do.
I do too. Do you know Konstantin Stanislavski?
Of course, yes.
He said character is action. So for me, everything has to grow out of character. It's got to be organic. So that's, you're writing a thriller and you have to have reveals and twists and turns, but you don't want everything to come from the reveal. I remember one author said she starts with the plot twist and then comes up with the characters. So for me, I feel like all that has to come out of the character's behavior. And that's a little challenging because you're writing in a genre and yet you're writing character-based stories. And yet you have to make sure all the twists and turns work. The reader doesn't learn them too fast or too late, or it's a balancing act. But I love suspense and mystery.
I wonder if our theater, I feel like I'm on the same page with you there. And I'm wondering if our theater background helps drive that. The character development and allowing the story to grow out of that.
I would say so. I mean, I remember when I was acting, I would write pages and pages of biography on my character.
Me too.
It got to a point where and in improvisation, got to a point where I didn't even want to get up on the stage anymore. Started rewriting my lines, which is when I realized I have to really be writing. But that's what I would do, hours and hours. And I think that really enriches our work to be character driven. And I think that's what readers like because they stick with characters when they forget everything else.
It's like your friend. You open up the pages and you go spend time with these characters that you like. It feels like you're spending time with friends to me.
Exactly. And, I was going to ask you about this, Bill, because of your series character. And I know this is maybe premature with a new suspense novel coming out, but I'm working on my 4th book, which is an idea for a series. And when I do author events, I take a poll now because you mentioned, Lara, characters people can relate to. And I'm thinking, is a series a good idea? Because if you have a character, as you know, that people really glom onto and readers like, they are going to continue to, buy your books, read about your character. And then you have this character arc that goes on forever. So I'm thinking for when it's character driven, a series seems like a perfect idea. I mean,
Well, there are two schools of thought on that. At least what I think you're saying. And I've heard both espoused at places like, Thriller Fest or whatever, and certainly at one point in time, people were saying no significant changes should happen to your series character during the course of a book because people aren't necessarily going to read them in order and they get confused. And so love interests always have to die at the end and they don't move or get a new job or anything like that. I always thought that's just so almost I mean, you're sucking one of the great pleasures out of novels. So when, like I did the 19, really 20, if you count Partners in Crime so far, Ben Kincaid series, he grows or changes or matures in every book. And that really wasn't that. I mean, we all go on so many character arcs in the course of our life, so many growth periods, and I think we don't even realize it.
No, that's so true. And then there's sequels and prequels.
Yeah.
Talking about returning characters, I left some loose threads, not intentionally, maybe subconsciously, in Saving Grace. That would be so perfect for a sequel. And I kind of feel like maybe you feel this as authors, or too, when you write a suspense that's a standalone, that the character hasn't finished talking to you. And there could be room. So that's another way. I mean, that's interesting too. I mean, there's so many ways to go with character.
I do think that your series idea is a sound one, that when people love a character, they're going to keep coming back to it. I have a series that I read. I just finished, I think, book 15 maybe, and I switched over to just a standalone to another author that I like. And I really enjoy her too, but I'm already feeling that tug back. I'm missing my other friends, right?
Oh, I love that.
Look at Steve Barry. His 18th Cotton Malone book is about to drop next month. It's
right.
They can keep going when people love them, when they're successful.
That's
a good idea.
Cool. Oh my God. I know. And then it's a pleasure to write character anyway. I mean, period. The story is great. You want all that to work, but character is everything.
We have a lot of aspiring writers who listen to the podcast. Can you talk about your path to publication?
Yes. I wrote Saving Grace. As I told you, I was a copy chief, and I wrote Saving Grace, and I sent it out to agents, and happily an agent took me on. And then he actually said, should we put this out on submission? Otto Penzler is starting a new imprint for Penzler Publishers and Mysterious Press called Scarlet, which will focus on female protagonists and female authors, although it's not limited to females. And he said we could give him an exclusive. What do you think we should do? And I said, I don't know. It's never been published.
Right.
He said, let's give it a shot and see. And I like the idea of a new imprint, especially female-centric. So it happened really quickly. I got my agent quickly. I got my publisher quickly. And I have a wonderful editor, Louisa Cruz Smith.
Fantastic.
She's incredible. And she's been with me through Saving Grace, First Victim, and The Man on the Train. So she's incredible.
I'm so happy that you've had good experience. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I feel very fortunate because I've heard lots of different stories.
Yes.
Right.
So have we. Yeah.
I know.
Well, what does a typical writing day look like for you? Are you still doing the copy writing, or have you stepped away from that and you're focused on writing books now?
I'm doing just a little Harlequin, believe it or not. They still
okay.
What's funny is Saving Grace was published by Harlequin in their Worldwide Mysteries. And I thought, how funny, I've come full circle because I started writing copy. So they asked me to do their intrigue line. It's not a lot, but I can't say no. And it's so much fun. And of course I speed through the book, or they give me an outline if they don't have the book. So I do a little of that, but basically just writing my books. And I'd like to say I get up in the morning and I write all day, but I don't. Some days but I do get up at 5:30 and I'm writing by 7:30. Which I find my life has changed, going to bed earlier and getting up earlier. And I thank my husband, Ted, for that, because he said, we have to change our habits. So I do that. And then sometimes I go to the gym in the morning, but then I plot while I'm on the machine. Right. And I used to talk into a recorder, but now I talk into the phone because it's a lot to input the recorder, which isn't even the real writing yet. And that's why it takes me a really long time to get to the first draft. When you talk into your phone, it gets the words wrong a lot, but
yes, I know.
You kind of know.
Yeah.
So I do that, and then I come back and write in the afternoon. Some days I just write straight through and go to the gym maybe like 3 or 4, because my best energy is usually in the morning, like between 7:30 and 12:30.
Right. And
then sometimes I'll get a spurt of energy and write a little at night. So I know some writers say I do 1,000 words a day. I know, that would be something. It was calling Stephen King. But I just kind of, sometimes I'm plotting and sometimes I'm doing the chapter, and then I rewrite so much that I write a chapter so many times that I can say this is finished, but it may not be, but it took 6 hours during the day. And I think of Oscar Wilde, who said, I spent all morning putting in a comma and all afternoon taking it out.
That's the writer's life.
I know, but I do try to write every day. I do.
So do you plot out before you? Are you a pantser or a plotter? You talking about doing some editing as you go. So what's your starting point?
I'm a pantser because it comes to me in the character, and then they start to reveal their world, and then things happen. But it's really funny because you're in the thriller genre, so you do need your structure, and you do need everything in the right order. So what happens is, I do so much internal stuff before I get to start to write. So maybe a chapter, I'm going to start writing the book, and it's already in my head so many different ways. Then I sit down and it changes again, because it's organic when you sit down. So I would say that I'm really a pantser, but there comes a point where I have to start plotting. And when I send my editor the first draft, she said, some people give me hot messes, she says, and then we have to totally work on it. What I try to give her is almost a finished product. And that's just because I keep rewriting. I can't write a whole draft and then go back. I have to write as I go and get it right as I go. So she may have some, so I have to do it. So, and outlines are very hard for me because I keep deviating.
Yeah.
I do outlines. It's like, no, and I'm writing this.
I was surprised to hear that Lisa Gardner considers herself a pantser. That really threw me. So this is fascinating to me. I love hearing that everyone finds what works for them and they go with it. And as long as it's working for you, I think you can find success. And I love that. And I want our listeners to hear that, because that concerns me. I don't want anyone to think, well, I can't write because, I don't get up at 5:30 in the morning. And so I can't just keep, there's whatever works for you. There's a way you can find it. If you're going to write, do it, and do it your way. It's okay.
Yeah. I met many plotters. I've met all different. Yeah, absolutely. And whatever works, and you feel good about your book, that's what counts.
That's what counts. Absolutely.
And hopefully everyone will love it, and all the readers will want to come back for more and find your voice and say, oh.
That's true. That's another problem, but you're going to spend so much time on it. You better love what you're writing, right?
Oh, yes.
This
absolutely.
is definitely true. We probably need to close this off, Debbie, but before I do, remind everyone about your forthcoming May release.
I'm going to hold it up. This is the advanced
Even
reading
better.
copy. This is The Man on the Train. I just got my advanced reading copies last few weeks ago, and I love what they did. I love it because it's an abandoned lighthouse, which figures prominently. It's Montauk. And even though he's the man on the train, this is like the view from the train. I just think they did a great job. Really
that's the best feeling. That's great.
And it's about
Congratulations.
a married man who sees a beautiful woman on a train.
Okay.
And things take on. And there are 2 murders 40 years apart. So there are 2 time periods. And the book comes out from Scarlet Suspense May 7th, 2024. And it's very Hitchcockian and fast read. So I think everyone will like My Man on the Train.
I bet they will. Fantastic. Debbie, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Oh, this was so much fun. We could talk all day, all night,
Good.
Right?
See you
Thank
again
you
soon.
for having me. It was really, really fun. I can't wait to listen and see it.
Just a few parting words. Laura, what can you tell us about?
Well, I'm going to talk about the cruise again, because I'm already about half packed for it. I'm a little bit excited to head out in April. We'll have 7 days that will be on that ship where you're locked in place, and you're going to come to class every day, and you're going to get instruction from Bill, from me, from surprise guests that we haven't even revealed yet.
Like 7 people, I think, already.
I guarantee somebody will be there and can speak to you about what your writing needs. If you are in a position where you're still trying to finish your manuscript and you can't quite seem to get past that finish line, we're going to give you the tools you need to get there. If you have finished your manuscript and you are experiencing what happened the first time I finished a manuscript, where you go back and read it and think, this is not good. This actually kind of sucks. And you need to know why it's not working and you need to fix it. We can give you the tools for that too. Mm-hmm. And if you have finished it and you're trying to figure out how to reach an agent, how to market it, whether you want to go traditional publishing or indie publishing, we're going to give you those tools too. And if you need something that we didn't mention, there's going to be somebody there that can answer that question. All you have to do is speak up and ask. And it's just the nicest group of people. So you won't be afraid to ask. And we have so much fun.
We do. You might even get to see Jessie sing karaoke. So
that's right.
That alone is
or maybe we'll play Neanderthal poetry again, and Jessie will beat you over the head with a club.
I still got the hat. So
all right, everybody.
I still love how you were perfect.
A game designed just for me. Yeah.
Listeners have no idea what we're talking about, but that's why you need to come on the cruise.
You have inside to come, then you're in on the inside jokes. Yeah.
All right. Until next time, everybody, keep writing. And remember, you cannot fail if you refuse to quit. All right. See you next time.